gallstones and the Seder, Passover Seder. That combination should not be uttered. It's just too much. But thankfully, we have a way to make it more realistic and pain-free if you stick by what we'll be going over together today. So how can one eat during the Seder without having a gallstone attack? Well, let's start by order. The simplest first. Okay, the simplest thing you can do to make yourself less likely to suffer is to trade the white matzahs for whole wheat matzahs. I mean, the shmuras are always whole wheat since forever. It's not like we're inventing the wheel here, but it's also very common to find whole wheat matzahs nowadays, at least here in Israel. If you're around the world in places that are less likely to find that, that may be a little bit of a challenge, but I'm sure you'll find a way. Now, even with it being whole wheat, which is wholesomer, healthier, less likely to cause indigestion and constipation, it still requires that we have a lot of liquids in our system before, after, whatever, just not during. Okay, don't eat and drink at the same time. The 4 cups during the Seder are the only ones I would put in. And even they are potentially part of the reason why people are very heavy at the end of the meal. So make sure you drink a lot before, and then an hour and a half later, bring in the extras too, because the more liquids are in the system, the less likely it is that you'll find yourself blocked up. Of course, what also helps is having a lot of vegetables during the meal. That is not a complication. That's actually very common, very easy to add to this meal, and that will solve the first problem. Then comes the bigger problem. Gallstones are very sensitive to oils, as you probably know by now, and if you've seen my movie on the 5 rules of oil, and if you haven't, I'll put a link up. It's very important to keep those rules, and I'll be going over them now. I will be saying one thing before I continue, just to make it easier for you to you don't feel all stressed up over this video. I've already started preparing a list of recipes that will fit what I'm teaching here, and they will be available to you. The links will be in the description below. I don't want you to just start scurrying and looking for solutions. I'm giving you the solutions. I'm just explaining first, so you'll know why we're doing all this. Okay, so the first rule of the oils is preferring vegetable sources, and vegetable sources only. That means you can still have the Seder plate with the drumstick and the hard-boiled egg and whatever you use to putting on that plate, but you just don't want to eat them. You want, and I know this is challenging, but this is a realistic challenge, and I'll be helping you. You want to be vegan. And a vegan Seder sounds almost oxymoronic, but it is possible, and it is wise. The last thing you want to do at least, is to find yourself in the hospital in the middle of the holiday. It's like the worst solution for avoiding the Seder. Anyway, so yeah, you want to do it vegan, and if you pre-plan it, and that's why I'm making sure this video loads today and not on the day of the Seder, giving you 24 hours to prepare. But if you want to come out of it safe, then that's the first and foremost choice. The second one is not to heat the oils, not to disrupt them, not to take any margarine, which is already industrialized, or anything similar. You want your oils fresh when you eat them. So that means you want to make sure that all the cooked dishes are cooked without any kind of oil. It's a bit outlandish. I know it sounds almost a heresy, but it is actually quite simple. Now, like I said, you'll have the recipes to see for yourself. It's realistic, and we do our best to actually make it tasty, at least as tasty, if not tastier. It's realistic to do that even tastier, because it's good quality materials equals, good product. But this is just like super important. You want to make sure you don't heat those oils, because even if you have the most high quality cold pressed oils or nuts or seeds or tahini, all of these, when they're heated, become landmines for your gallstones, and they can really trip you up. So the third rule is all about Well, having the right amount of oil. And one of the biggest challenges with the Seder, all over the world last I checked, is the fact that most people eat way too much. I mean, that first button goes like mid-meal, second button by the time you're at the end of the meal, and if you can sing at the end, it's a miracle, right? It's just that challenge. And if you don't want to get there, you want to be proportionate, not just in the amount of oil, but in the amount of food in general that you ingest during that meal. Choose the main courses that you are going to go for, and if you're going to taste everything else, at least do it very symbolically. Otherwise, it's going to be impossible to manage this. And that's especially true about the oil. And remember, rule number 4 says you can't just have all the daily oil in one meal. That would have been partly an easy solution here, but it doesn't work that way. If you have all your daily oil in one meal, it will be potentially a very powerful pain hazard. We don't want that. So that means you're going to be eating your breakfast with the breakfast doughs. You're going to eat your lunch with the lunch doughs, and then you're going to get to the Seder, and that's all you have left, that last third, which means you have to be really calculated about your oils. And one trick that will make life a lot easier is to make sure that all the food is cooked without oil. That's not just about cooking, it's without oil, period. Oil-free food. And just choose one dish. Chaoset is classic, one dish that will serve your oil needs. And just put, olive oil or whatever on the table for the others. That, if they want to swell up, that's their choice. But if everything is cooked without oil, then you have easy control over the dose of oil that you'll be eating, and then it's realistic. That is one of the most important challenges here, and it's quite a simple solution when you think about it. It doesn't have to mean that the food will be tasteless. It'll actually be very good if you do it right. But if you're counting on oil for the taste, then we're in trouble. So, yeah, and if you can't do it to the whole meal, just make sure you do it to those dishes that you're going to be eating. And that way, at least for you, there's a solution. There's a way to control the amount of oil that you're going to be eating. And since number 5 is about going back to the source, then the chaoset is actually a classic solution, because you can just have the nuts in, there are 2 tablespoons of nuts, more or less, inside your dose of chaoset, right next to your plate. Everybody else can have whatever they want, and that's your oil for the day. That's probably the safest way to do it, and it's probably going to allow you to enjoy this thoroughly without paying any price. Now, there is, of course, a separate challenge. It's called wine. And there is no room for errors here. Wine can squeeze out your gallbladder and liver just as strong as oil. So drinking wine is like drinking oil. It will cause pain, very, very likely. And you don't want that. So replace it with grape juice. Organic, preferably. They're much better. So just put those 4 cups of grape juice, and you're good. No alcohol. And don't cook with alcohol either. It doesn't really relieve all the alcohol from the dish just because you cooked it. So stay away from alcohol. This is a very serious warning here. Okay? And then comes the real challenge. The real challenge, what happens if you're just a guest? If you're coming to be a guest over at someone else's Seder, then you don't call the shots, right? So how can you survive that without a painful attack? And the simple answer for that is a social answer. Bring your own dishes. And not just the plates themselves. I'm talking about bringing, the food that you want to have to be able to eat safely. Bring enough of it so others can enjoy it too. Don't be a hog. And once you brought your own dishes, you have control over what you eat. Be wise. Don't eat everything else if you don't know what's going on in there. You really don't want to risk that pain. Okay? So it's possible to do all that. And here's the last tip. Some will not accept it. I understand. But it's a very common trend over the past few years that I've heard about a lot. And that is the reverse Seder, where you start with the food and then move on to all the rest of the Seder and the singing, etc., which is very practical because it means you won't be eating late, and eating late will likely lead to more pain than eating on time at a reasonable hour. Of course, in some families, the easier solution will simply be to move the Seder as early as possible, so you don't actually have to eat very late. It can be moved down to a reasonable hour that way too. Up to you. Just remember, eating late makes it harder to digest, which means more potential pain as well. So all of these together, they're realistic. I know they're challenging, and I know you can do it. And I'm here for you. If you need anything, ask any questions. Just use those links below to make sure you have those recipes ready and don't have to, think about all of them yourself. Of course, if you do find better ones, share them below. Everybody deserves to have a lovely meal, right? So have a wonderful holiday and be seeing you.